So anyways, I was going to attempt to sing, and I'm just too shy when it comes to it, like especially to do it on camera because I'm not professional. But I was listening to Hyde Matsumoto's song. Heidi, what are you doing? Oh, you want that off? There you go. So I was sorry, my dog distracted me. I was listening to a song, and I'm pretty upset because they took down the video of the song Pink Spider, and let me see if I can try to find it somewhere else. Pretty much Pink Spider was his letter to say goodbye when he was gonna kill himself. So I think that's part of the reason why they took it down. Which is messed up because even though it is very sad, it's also part of his legacy, and it's part of how he felt. It's gone. It's nowhere to be found. I'm so upset. It's a beautiful video, but when I watched it, I was like, this is bad. He obviously was planning it for a while, and no one said anything. So, and then all of a sudden when he actually did it, people were like, how could this be? And it's like, dude, if you'd listen to his freaking music, he was telling you how much pain he was in, and all his music, I think I haven't listened to his earlier stuff. I think I've only listened to 2 songs, and that's pretty much all I needed to listen to. I had to listen to, let's see. And it sucks that I can't play it because, yeah, there are a few songs that that it's obvious. Someone who had depression. I learned about him in middle school. That's when I was really deep into the visual kei scene, the Japanese rock scene. That was very visual. That's why they call it visual kei. And I learned about it because I loved Deer Gray and some other bands, but Deer Gray was my main thing. And they were talking about how they were inspired by Hyde and all this stuff. And I think they mentioned how it came to a surprise to everyone that he killed himself. But I was literally there watching his videos, and I was I wasn't surprised because he was obviously expressing himself. Because I did the same thing through my art and my poetry, mainly my poetry in middle school. I was in a lot of pain, and poetry and music are pretty much the same shit. You just sing it instead of speak it. So, unfortunately, people who don't suffer from extreme emotions, because that's what they are. They're extreme emotions based on high empathy, because a lot of people who have depression, are I'm trying not to make noise, are high, they're empathic beings. Is that how you say it? They're empathic beings, and what goes around, what happens around them, they kind of absorb that energy. It's just part of being an empath, if you want to call them. So they go through extreme emotions, extreme sadness. things that most people are pretty blocked off on. Like they live in a manner of non-feeling. Like they don't want to feel anything, because if they feel something, then like most people live their lives in numbness because they just want to focus on surviving, while other people who are extreme emotional beings, clearly, like you so um and if you don't know how to control your emotions, then obviously they can get out of hand, and that's what happens when people commit suicide. For his case, I wish that somebody was there for him, but when you're a celebrity, like, I imagine, just as a regular person, there are a lot of fake people that just want to ride on your coattails, right? Because you're making money, you're popular, and they want to kiss your ass. But when it comes to actually being your friend and being there in the hard times, they disappear, right? I'm thinking of a particular example in my life. I made some friends with some neighbors. They're pretty young, early 20s, some of them 18. And, they were artists, so we got along. But, like, the age difference, like the level of where I was in my life and them, like, I was like, oh shit, like, I'm an old lady. But we had a situation where there was an older friend who was in his 40s, and he was hanging out with people who were a lot younger than him, and making nasty comments, because these are all girls. And I was like, I'm not going to tolerate that shit. Like, So, before all this, everyone was like, you're so cool, Michelle. Like, you're so awesome. And I was like, hey, I know. But I had to make the hard decision to, confront, which they didn't want to do, because they're like, that's just the way he is. And I was like, I understand you're young, but if you allow this behavior, like, it's going to keep going. Like, I've been past that. I know they're like babies. So I was like, no, I don't tolerate that. Like, he's not allowed in my house anymore. Like, sorry. Like, but yeah, like, after I confronted him, I never heard from those people again. So I imagine it's like that. And that's fine, because don't you dare try to do that. He's going to jump. What are you eating? Don't eat that. The chaos. And it's only like 7 a.m. It's almost 8. So yeah, so that's fine for me, because, like, I'm an adult. But I imagine somebody, if I was in a very I would say soft place where I was really vulnerable, then that would trigger me. Like, and I'm sure that either hide. I can imagine he brought up these feelings of, wanting to die to some of his friends, and they probably were like, because when you bring that up, people either, they'll be there for you, or they'll go away, which is sad. It's like, the fuck? But yeah, I eventually will get a tattoo of his song, Pink Spider. I was gonna get originally on somewhere here. I have a scar here, so I think that'll be perfect. Right here, for some reason, I don't know why, I wanted to get a Black Widow spider, but like magenta, because that's the color of his hair. like a hot pink magenta. It's more hot pink. And I was doing some research, and there's actually a pink spider, and I was like, I'm gonna get that actual pink spider. Just makes sense. And then, oh my god, sorry. The it's always like that's one thing that really like, and let me look up the word because I don't want to mess it up. Yeah, it always incites me when people after the fact, after somebody has like suffered and expressed their pain, like to somebody, like, like they've opened up to people, they've opened up to their family, like they're talking, and then, nobody really wanted to pay any attention. Like they would just diminish it, like, oh, that person's just dramatic, like they're just emotional, and then when they actually go through with it, sorry, the animals are everywhere. When they actually go through with it, all of a sudden everyone cares. Like, oh my god, like, did you know, blah blah blah, 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 like, I'm so sad, like, and it's like, no, like, fuck you, like, you really didn't care at all, like when the person was crying and suffering and saying all this stuff, like you just want to feel better about yourself, like, it's too late, like that person's gone. And there were a couple situations where like it was like that in my life, and I was like, fucking assholes, man, like you guys are all fucking fake. Pisses me off. I'm not getting pissed off right now. I'm just saying that in general, this is an example for people who, if you have a lot of friends, and when you talk about heavy things like, hey, I want to kill myself, or hey, I'm in a lot of pain, and then those friends are like, and they don't even pay attention to you, get rid of them. They're not your friends, and they don't deserve you in their lives. Like, they can go fuck themselves. And I've had people like that. And I think I mentioned it before. When I was in college, I was severely depressed. And I was telling people, like, I'm depressed. Like, I feel terrible. Like, I feel really bad. And they ended up telling me, like, hey, we know you're depressed, but stop talking about it because it's bringing everyone else down. And I was like, oh, okay, well, thank you. I guess I'm just gonna go fuck myself. Bye. Like, and like, that was like a slap in the face. Like, wow, like everyone said that about me. And it was a group chat, like, and I was like, yeah, like, thank you. And that's how people are. Like, they don't really care. Like, they only want to be your friends. Maybe this is just Miami thing. Like, they only want to be your friends when you entertain them, when you're happy-go-lucky, But when it comes to the deep darkness of the human soul, all of a sudden it's like they don't want anything to do with you. So I feel like that is what Hyde Matsumoto went through, and I feel sorry for him. I don't feel sorry for him. I just wish somebody was there when he was in pain to hug him and tell him like it's okay. But people who are two-faced, and their two-faced ways end up killing people. You know. But there's another story that I read about someone who killed himself, and he was, I believe, 18, and his name was Eric. And I'm also getting a tattoo to honor his life and him. But Eric he was severely mentally ill. Like he didn't have any control of how to control his emotions, like any guidance, and sometimes there's really nothing you can do. It really depends on the situation. Like I think Eric was like a tortured soul, because he had a really good mother. Like his mother is the one that wrote the book after he died. His mother seemed very loving and doting and kind, but despite everything that she tried to do, he was just suffering like in his mind. And that's the worst kind of suffering. There's two types of suffering. There's suffering in the heart, that's really painful. And then there's suffering in the mind, which is like what mental illness is. So mental illness is just like this demon that like haunts you and makes you feel like shit on a daily basis, and really is like a psychological torture for anyone who doesn't understand what it really is. So he had a lot of demons, and he just didn't know how to deal with it, and he went through with it. He did something very, very like, trigger warning. He used a gun, and unfortunately his mom found him, and it was just, she described everything like in the book, and I was like, I think I cried too. Like I was probably crying. I can't imagine being a mom and coming home and seeing that. Like that would destroy me. But and this is why, part of the reason why I wanted to be an example to everyone and my children, is that I absolutely refuse to be ignorant and uneducated when it comes to people with disabilities, people with mental illnesses, people with suicide tendencies, but also with my children. If they ever come up to me and have to talk to me like in a deep manner, I won't be like, oh, you're just being emotional. Like I would never say that to anyone. And my own family would say that, like, she's just emotional, leave her alone. Like, and it was like, then who do I have to talk to if I can't even talk to my family? I can't talk to my friends. The only thing that I have is myself. So you see where I'm trying to give you an example. If you cut out every support system, then the only thing the person has to do is like end it, like, because they have nowhere to release emotion. So that is the most dangerous thing to do, and that's what people with ableist don't understand, is that the reason why most people are mentally ill is because they're doing it. It's a reaction, like, it's based on the environment. Like most children come into this world happy, open-eyed, and charismatic and kind, but as they witness our environment, the way people react, the way they're treated, it starts to change. It starts to cut away the kindness and the love. They have to close themselves off to protect themselves. And then they become bitter and angry and depressed, So it all depends on nurture, But unfortunately, people who don't educate themselves, like, let's just call them normies, the people who just function in society to survive, that don't even bother to read a book or don't even bother to, try. They don't comprehend that what they say and what they do to children, to their kids, has a big impact, on mental illness. for me, it's like when I hear people say certain things, like it's okay for you to say that, hey, you're depressed, we don't want to talk to you. Say it to me, yeah, go ahead. It did hurt. It still kind of hurts. I'm human. But if I hear someone say that to someone else, then it's a different fucking story. Okay, because I know what I can take. I can take a lot. I can take a hit, but I don't know what somebody else can tolerate, right? So that's why I try to use very specific language, very specific words, because that's what I learned through my journey of depression and suicidal thoughts and shit. And also because I like to cut people with my words. Oh, shit. Okay. But where was I going on? I'm not trying to rant. So when people are like severely mentally ill, they are usually, here in America, the system is, oh, they're insane, they're crazy, they need medication, they're the ones that are the problem, so we have to give them something to do. We have to give them medication, they have to go to therapy, and blah blah blah. But in reality, from my own personal experience, from what I've learned, it's not that person's fault, right? The person who is mentally ill is a victim of the environment, the way they were raised, and the system. The people that I know who have mental illnesses, they have families who are in poverty, families who are uneducated from third world countries, and they don't have the opportunities and privilege to live a stable life. So constantly, every day, they live in fear, they live in insecurity, and they're not given the opportunity to educate themselves, right? So instead of fixing the system, the band-aid is, oh, that person has a mental illness, so like we'll label them for the rest of their life that they can never do anything because, they have a mental illness, they have a disability. Their life is never going to amount to anything. But in reality, it's how they're treated when they were children, how they're treated when they're adults, and whether or not they realize that they have control over their emotions. But unfortunately, a lot of families who are from third world countries, they don't believe in a lot of third world countries. They practice gender norms, like basically, if I have a boy, he has to be tough, he has to provide for the family, and if he cries, he's weak. If I have a girl, like she has to bear children, she has to know how to cook and clean, and that actually fucks people up, because if you have the old world views, you come to a new country where it's more open, and you try to force someone to be those old gender norms, it doesn't work out, because then it's like a duality, like this, like I can't be anything because it just doesn't make sense, So, and they also practice, excuse me, I'm talking a lot, so my mouth is dry. So they also practice a lot of like hitting their children, like punishing, but some of it is like extreme, like punishment, which I don't think anyone should hit children, in a violent way. Like it's not, it's fucked up, and it's abuse. Like it's really abuse. because based on child psychology, let's just go. So people don't think I'm full of shit, right? So based on child psychology, right? Like I said, children are very innocent. They're clean. They're like a clean slate. And they look to their parents and their family to understand the world. So, obviously kids are mischievous and they act out. So if you, the person that's supposed to protect them, your parents, right? The parents end up hitting them, right? Like brutally, like I'm talking about like beating the shit out of them, because a lot of people practice that, unfortunately. They're going to be confused. Like, who do I go to feel safe, right? Because the people that are supposed to protect me are hurting me. And that's the beginning of the damage. And there's a lot of cultures where if you bring it up, they'd be like, but my mom did it. And it's like, well, obviously you're fucked up, so don't do it anymore. Like, so my mom, and my dad, they're old world views. So I was punished a lot because I was insane. I was a troublemaker. Like I was already rebellious when I was young, like messing stuff up a lot, pushing people's buttons. Like that was me. But I don't think it's ever okay to hit your kids in a physical way. Like, I think that's really lazy parenting in any manner. Like, and also you don't want to express anger towards your children, because that's also very damaging too. So back to Eric. So Eric, he's like a different case, because he's I'm not gonna say he's lost or he was hopeless. It's just that he lived in America, so the system of care failed him pretty much, because it's just not made to help people. It's made to make a profit. And unfortunately, he ended his life. And with Eric, it was just very interesting story about how he came back. And I know most people would be like, what? His mom contacted him from the other side, and she talked about what he was experiencing, because like there was obvious enough proof for her to write a whole book. And it was very nice. But I think that when people gossip or whisper after someone has done it, like, oh my God, like, I didn't know, or how could they, like, I think that that's like so disrespectful. If I was a ghost and someone did that to me, like people who obviously knew that I was depressed, I'd fucking haunt the shit out of them. Anyways, but in Catholicism, unfortunately, if someone kills themselves, you can't be buried in a traditional manner because it's a sin. And I think that's like the stupidest thing ever. Like, wow, like, thanks. Oh. But yeah, people's view on depression and suicide, and they don't usually want to talk about it because it's just too hard for them. They don't want to think about it. And it's like, well, you should think about it because it happens every day. I don't know the numbers, but people kill themselves every day. So I'm not saying to like be consumed about it, but you know, like be aware. It's just ridiculous. And that's usually why I'm very blunt and I'm very open and I'm very like I have no filter when it comes to that. Like I'll go up to someone. It's more to see what for people to prove, whether they deserve to be in my life or like I need to let them go. I usually just bring up hard topics like, hey, like blah blah blah, and then if they're like, I can't talk about this, I'll be like, okay, well, I understand. Or they prove that they don't care or they have no interest in anything. I'm just like, okay, well, I don't need you as a friend because, we're not going to get along anyways, because I talk about hard shit all the time. But I had a case where, and this is something that happens to everyone with a disability or mental illness when they're trying to date. They're trying to find, like, should they tell the person that first that they have a mental illness before they even start dating, or should they wait a while and then tell them, or just make it public knowledge. I decided to make it public because I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, if you have a problem with me having a disability, it's not really a disability, but mental illness, whatever, then just get the fuck out because I'm not going to waste my time. But there were people who, I told later on, like people that I was interested in dating. I was like, hey, like I have bipolar disorder. It's mental illness, and it's mainly depression, because bipolar has two parts, two different sides, manic depression and what is it? Can't think of the word. High energy, the opposite, like super happy, crazy. I'm no longer in the manic depression. I'm just me. So I told someone that, and they were like, well, I'm not interested anymore. You have too many problems and you should really fix your life. And I was like, wow. Well, thank you. I'm glad that you told me because you're a fucking asshole and I wouldn't want to be with you anyways. Bye. So people are like that, like in Miami. I don't think it's like that everywhere. I hope not. Oh God, it's fucking crazy. Like, so I think that people really want to do the blame game when it comes to people with disabilities and mental illnesses. They start pitting people like, oh, they have a disability, they have a mental illness, like they're never going to be able to be normal. And it's like, that attitude has to fucking change, first of all. And also, like, who wants to be normal? Because that's really boring to me. I know, you're just a Karen going to your 9-to-5 job and hating your life and drinking your daiquiris at night, trying to drown the sorrow. Like, no. And acting out in public to people you don't even know. So no, thank you. I think that the blame should really be put on the parents, and and social structure, right? If I ever practice psychology, I would present it this way. I'd be like, okay, so tell me how you were treated as a child when you were young, and what your parents did when you did something naughty or misbehaved. And then from there, I would just be like, okay, well, that makes sense. Then, it's not really you who has a disability or a mental illness. Your parents, are the ones that need to go to therapy. And also the kids should still go to therapy, but I'd be like, you don't need the label of blah, blah, blah. Like, you were just reacting to your environment, but most people just, oh, this kid has ADHD. This kid has high anxiety, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, as a psychologist, you should know that there's more to them. Like, but that's the way the system is set up. And you know why? Because it's fucking white men who did that, and they're fucking retarded. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. Like, they're dumb as hell. Like, they have no mental capacity to think beyond this little box, okay? Like, all they think is, yeah, the checklist, and then they don't think about anything else. Yeah. And there's not a lot of psychiatrists who are women who are practicing, young women, not old women. So that's really interesting. So I'm just kind of like thinking. So yeah, so the whole thing about Head Matsumoto and Eric, for Eric, it wasn't a different thing. His mom was aware that he had depression. She was trying to help him. He was going to therapy, but it just didn't work. There was another thing where let's go into like a ghost story, like a personal ghost story. Not really a ghost story. It was just interesting. So my father works for this printing company, and I've never been there before, but he asked me to help him, and I was like, sure, I'll help. Because I don't mind helping my dad or my mom. Because he has his own business. So, I went to this print company, and like before we got in, he's like, well, Michelle, I want you to know that the owners, it's a family run thingy. Their twin sons, one of them killed himself. And I was like, oh. And he's like, don't mention anything. And I was like, well, okay. I was like, why would I bring that up? But okay. And so I was like, damn. So I walked in, and the office, I was in the doorway, and the mom, like, she's a super beautiful, sweet lady. She was sitting at a big desk, and she was smiling. And I was like, hi, like introducing myself. And then I walked in, and I just got the feeling that something was like staring at me. Like, it was really weird. And I turned around, like I was talking to her, and then I was like I stopped talking to her, and I was like, the conversation ended. And then I was like turning around to like leave or something. And I like stopped dead in my tracks. Like, I was like, the fuck? She had a big portrait of her two sons, and I just kept staring at one of them, and I was like, really? I was like, really like entranced by it. Like, just one of them. Like, they looked the same. There's a specific word for it, like identical. But I was like, I think it was the one on the left. And I was just staring at him. And I was like, I can't say anything because my dad told me not to say anything. But I was like, and I was like, I turned around, and their mom was like staring at me, and she's like, what? And I was like, nothing. Like I just I was like, no, it's nothing. And then I walked out and I was like, I can't. It was really weird. Like it was like the painting was like talking to me, not like physically. Like it caught my attention. Like it was like staring at me. Like it was the weirdest thing ever. And I was like I wanted to ask, but like it wasn't appropriate. I was like, why? Who's this guy? Like, who's the one on the left? And I just walked away and I was like, weird. But yeah, it was unfortunate that he ended his life in college. I'm sure he was like suffering from depression and all that, and then his girlfriend, I think, cheated on him or something, and he ended his life. Like that was the catalyst, and that was it. So yeah, how you treat people really has an impact, and that's why I'm not mean to people like some people are, where they just say shit, unprecedented or unnecessary like shit to people. Like, they just want to put their projections on people and then treat them like garbage, and then they don't know that that person has been suffering. You don't know what anyone has gone through. Oh, you're right. We have to go walkies. She's staring. Okay. All right, we're gonna go. So yes, that's my perception on all that. But we are gonna do kind reading today after I finish walking this dog, right? Also, another thing before I go, I think therapy animals are the best thing to do. Like if your kid is suffering, um, you know, Heidi is not officially a therapy dog because that costs a lot of money, but she has really good senses, right? Without her, I think I would have I wouldn't have done anything, but I wouldn't have been as great as I am. All right, we're going. We're gonna go walkies. Ay, no, don't scratch me.